It looked major league. It was a success. What next? And what does this mean for independent wrestling? And what do you think this could lead to?
Well, next is Madison Square Garden, because they don't really have time to do anything between now and then.
And that's a long time, though.
Well, I mean, they have time to do things, but they don't have time to do something this big again, and spur of the moment's notice, and et cetera, and with the schedule of other people's big events, they're not going to rush this. If they do rush it, they're insane. Ring of Honor needs to make sure they got all these guys together, and they've got them signed up. As we've talked about, I don't think that any of them.
Would you do that if you were one of them right now? Hypothetically, if you're Cody or the Bucks and you're in that situation and you see what's going on, would you sign an exclusive contract with anyone?
I would sign with Ring of Honor to keep on their television, and as long as they're still allowed to do all the other things that they're doing now. Because that's the thing. They either need to do all the same things they're doing now, or they need to go work for Vince. And that's the last thing I'd do if I was them, as we've talked about, because Vince would look at the Bucks and laugh. Vince would look at Omega probably and like him until Omega melted down mentally because he thought he was going to create all this art and change the face of wrestling. And, then he'd get up there and the boys would torment him till he'd fucking jump off of a roof somewhere, not in a match. I think they have to re-sign with Ring of Honor to continue, because that's all part of it. They've got their YouTube, but they're also on Ring of Honor TV. Ring of Honor as a promotional entity is backing up their promotional efforts. And the New Japan connection, they work with everybody.
Yeah, I would ask for promotional support in the contract. If I intend to promote future events, I would want Ring of Honor in my contract as a talent to also supply promotional support for my company.
Well, yeah. Big, and somebody said on the internet when they bought merchandise at the show, it popped up as where they bought from Ring of Honor. Well, of course, these fucking are the wrestlers going to set up all this infrastructure just for what they thought was going to be one show? They may want to do it in the future, but they don't have to, because they've partnered with an ongoing business that's in the business of promoting wrestling events and selling wrestling merchandise. So if they're all in that together, and New Japan, the same thing. Somebody said on the internet a couple weeks ago, well, Ring of Honor has just hopped on to New Japan selling out the Garden. Fuck. Besides the fact they wouldn't be in the Garden if it wasn't for Sinclair Broadcasting's legal team. They've got the infrastructure. They've got the goddamn, they're in this country. They've got access to all the native talent. New Japan's going to come over here, get a date at Madison Square Garden, and fucking go through all that. Besides that, it's New York City. For fuck's sake, do you think New Japan, they're used to dealing with the Yakuza, not the New York Union? They wouldn't know who to pay off first. Anyway, the point is they're all working together. They all need to stay working together. It's benefiting everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Everyone has always said, who can compete with Vince? How do you compete with Walmart? How do you compete with this guy who has this major, he has significant money, obviously, behind him. He's an unstoppable machine. How do you compete with that? Well, maybe it's by going the other way. Instead of being Walmart, be Amazon. Be decentralized. Be like the Bitcoin of wrestling. But you don't have to worry about the overhead. And if you have a collective or a group of promoters, and if you could somehow find reliable local promoters in cities that see what they did in Chicago and say, hey, let's bring you to, and you figure out what will be the right city. Let's bring you to New York. Let's bring you to Los Angeles, whatever it may be. Next thing you know, you have true competition. You have a place where guys can leave Vince and go because it's not the promotion that's drawing the crowd. It's the individual names. And there's actually a forum now with YouTube and with everyone controlling their own social media and with everyone controlling their own merchandise. There's a forum now. Once you either build up a name after several years on the independents or get out of the WWE with a name, and more than likely you have to change it to something else, but people will know who you are, that you can actually survive now on your own. And if we can get, if they get some local,
who are you representing over there?
If some local promoters, some reliable people, you can find Zane Breslov who will work with you instead of Vince. Next thing you know, you actually could have something. There is something significant happening here.
But there's another. I wanted local promoters in all the markets just for the Ring of Honor shows when Sinclair first got started. We could find people that could fucking tie their shoes in some places. But yes, and see, once again, that's the thing. You've got Ring of Honor has television in so many markets. But also the big markets now have proven that if you don't schedule them too close together, that some people will travel, and in the major cities you can get a good crowd now. But all of those things working together, they all have something that each other needs. They all control a good amount of talent and exposure in various ways. So if they all work together, because I've always said there's room. Nobody's going to beat Vince, and nobody in our lifetimes, probably most people listening out there, is even going to get really neck and neck with Vince again, I don't think. But there's always been room for a number 2 wrestling promotion to still make a shitload of money in the United States if they did it right.
Well, that's what it is. No one's
Which
beating
is hence
Vince.
why everybody's tried to do it. It's just they didn't do it right.
Yeah, no one's going to beat Vince. It's not about that. It's about finding a way to actually be able to make a living outside of Vince. And this could be the beginning of that opportunity. If you could let me ask you this hypothetically. I was thinking about Billy Joel.
I mean, there's already people making a living without Vince.
Grow. I'm saying
worldwide.
It can be much bigger. I'm saying the money they're making could be much bigger. And I think this weekend in Chicago was a good sign of that. And I was talking to Jeff Baldwin about this, actually. Billy Joel plays Madison Square Garden once a month. He doesn't want to go on the road anymore. He's old.
Yeah.
He's hit a lot of trees in his car. I don't know what's going on with Billy Joel. But he plays the Garden. He sells it out once a month. Do you think something like this, where they've showed they can get 10,000 people to fly into Chicago, and obviously there's a lot of other things tied into it that drew people there, but the beginning and the end of it was the wrestling show. It sold out in 30 minutes or whatever. The wrestling show got people there. Do you think that is something you could take on the road and do monthly in 10 to 15,000 seat arenas?
Well, until you just finished it with that. No, yes, you can. It's the basis of the wrestling business. House shows. I talked about a couple weeks ago. They ought to do a Ring of Honor tour off the Madison Square Garden sellout and promote it as the thing on the road. The same thing with, if you don't go in with the idea you're going to draw 10 or 15,000 people every time. Certainly in the United States of America, once a month, you could run a show of some description if you were these guys. But actually, then that would, because they don't have an office and they don't have people set up to do that, they would be running it with Ring of Honor, because you can't, I don't care who you are, you can't do all the things that's required of a local promotion by yourself for a once a month show in different places. So what maybe they ought to do is just make one Ring of Honor house show a month, since it's most all the same guys. Brand it as the All In crew and fucking All In on the road. And it'd probably do better than the average fucking Ring of Honor show. But if you set your sights on 2,500 or 3,000 seats, if it's a market that you think you can do it, and maybe you can get a deal on a 5,000 or 6,000 or 7,000 seat building and see what happens. But you don't fucking go for a crowd like that or a building like that once a month, every month, because it'll get old. Your mega shows still have to stand out from your regular shows, which is when you start a territory, you don't start out with the goddamn biggest card ever in many years, because then you come back with a secondary card every week after that for fucking months.
But this isn't starting a territory. This is guys who have established themselves as a la carte wrestling stars. You could take any of these guys and plug them into an independent show. It'll boost the independent show. So why couldn't they, and they continue promoting everything the way they're doing, continue building up their audience, and they only have gotten more publicity coming out of this. Why couldn't they actually get enough people to travel, 10,000 people to travel to see them? These guys are stars. To the Young Bucks fans, Young Bucks are rock stars. People travel to see stars.
I'm just that it might run 3 or 4, and then it would start drooping because it get old and expensive, and people have lives. And also, when you've seen the gymnastics show, then that's where booking comes into play. And what programs are they going to continue from one show to another? And then it becomes just like the old days of the regular house shows. Then people go to the mega show and it sells out. Or a big crowd comes to a really hot match, or the average crowd starts coming every week because that's what they're however long, because that's what they like to do. And then it doesn't have the history aspect of first time ever to draw 10,000 people and so, or first time to run Madison Square Garden, or first time to do this. You start making your shows regular. Then there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you budget so a regular show still makes money. But you can't just do especially at their level now, you're pushing them off a fucking cliff. You can't just do this every month and I'm not comparing you to the fucking Archbishop.
You better not.
But Vince Russo said one time, I said, what happens when business goes down? If we're smart, it will never go down. It wasn't long, it went down. So he answered his own question, but it's always going to go down.
Let me ask you this then. If you right now were an upper mid-card WWE star and you're making really good money, but you're not happy, whatever it is, you're not fulfilled, you're not happy, you're just sick of the grind. There could be a number of reasons. They want to renew you. You don't want to be there anymore. What would you do? Would you take the risk and go into this independent scene and, try to get a deal with New Japan or try to just work the independents? What would you do right now if you're in that position?
Yeah, well, if I thought that I could either work in New Japan or that I could work on the independents, if I was one of the guys that if I wasn't doing the WWE style, as they say, that I might not get over everywhere else and maybe I just shut up and hope something happened. But if I was confident that I could do something somewhere else, yes, I'd go. The thing is, it's not about, it's about whether you can get over yourself or not. And yes, there's a lot of tools, but I think in some respect, you need a promotional push behind you still to get, so you have to weigh the options. But like these guys right now, no, there's no reason they should work for Vince. And some of the guys working for Vince that think they can do better could, if they can fit in with these guys, it would probably be a better thing for them to do that. But now, especially all the Ring of Honor guys are thinking, hey, fuck, we want to protect our spots. So they're going to start jumping off the fucking roof. But that, that's the thing, is they need to take this slow, peak to big events, maybe try, like I said, in All In on the Road, where it's one of the Ring of Honor shows, but with a different look, because it's like they're the ones that are the matchmakers or whatever, and see what the fuck, and see if they hear from any prospective sponsors that don't want to sponsor giant penises on their air or whatever. And instead of trying to think, oh God, we got to strike while the iron is hot. No, you need to put the infrastructure in place. Don't get too big too quick. And just 3 or 4 of the boys themselves without Ring of Honor. And last I heard from anybody in Ring of Honor, they were stretched to the fucking asshole to appetite on manpower and people to run things and do things. So, they don't need to just jump with both feet into this either and look bad. They need to plan their shit and they need to have it lined up well in advance. And I think right now, and regardless of what Cody and those guys want to do or Ring of Honor wants to do or all together, they ought to concentrate on doing their own regular business, making their own regular shots until Madison Square Garden. And hopefully by then they've got a year planned where they're all going to milk that and take advantage of it and something on the West Coast and whatever the fuck, but not too much, or it ain't going to be special anymore.
I think this has turned into one of the more interesting years in Chris Jericho's career. What do you think of the career choices he's made this year? I've been fascinated by it.
Well, yes, it's fun because he pops up everywhere and he looks different and blah, blah, blah. And he gets paid wherever he goes and he's doing his own thing. And before he said he wouldn't work for anybody but Vince, but that's only because to work for anybody but Vince at that point in time in the United States, he would have looked minor league.
Yeah, but plus then he got his buddy Don Callis a job, so it changed everything.
Well, but there you go. But no, he still hadn't been on Impact yet, has he? I don't know
Just wait.
I don't know if I expect him to pop up on the TV Guide channel or whatever, but nevertheless, no. But the thing is, before it didn't look for him it didn't look minor league for him to be, or outlaw mud show for him to work for anybody else. It's when you can be in front of 10,000 people or be in Japan at Tokyo Dome or wherever the fuck. And that's once again, just where they were. I just can't get over it. And these people just wind me sideways, grind my gears with it's supposed to be fun, entertaining, silly. That's right. Fuck you.
That actually
back in my day. Well, no, but here's the thing. Here's how far it's gone in the logic of the business. Not only with the boys, but in the old days, we killed ourselves to make people believe against their will and were somehow able to. And today, some of the fans are screaming at